Hello, folks. Welcome to our Dinar Perspectives Roundtable for Thursday, 1 March 2018. Usually it's a roundtable, but today we've got a couple folks out, so it's kind of like those Mickey D's booth tables where you got just two and it's a couple guys across a thing from the so as much as we would enjoy the roundtable, we understand our members, our team members' problems. So moving on here, I want to thank, first of all the members on the site who are great researchers just on a daily basis. Y'all knock it out of the park. I appreciate what you do. I know the team does, and the other people, especially the new people coming in, they appreciate it much because they've been steered in so many directions. So it's good to find a place where you can rest for a minute. Okay, bear with me just a second. Okay, yeah, I would also I want to thank Dinar Recaps for carrying us. We appreciate what you guys do, and we appreciate the assistance getting our call out there. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, this call might be a short one, and I recall saying that before, and then we've had to use a shoehorn to get Bobby out of the room. So we'll go with what we got, and we hope y'all enjoy what we bring you today. So without any further song or dance, I'm going to swing it to Bobby, and he's going to give us our discussion points.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome, everyone. And yeah, big time. Thank you to all the group members. They bring so much thought about this investment that it's really cool to see that we have a group of people that are concentrating on this investment. We're not out there to lead anyone astray or anything like that, or give you false hopes. I mean, everything on the surface speaks for itself. The waiting is the hardest part. But anyway, let's get to this. Obviously, the number one issue for discussion in the last month or so has been the budget. We finally got to the point to where they started voting on the articles of the budget. They voted on 12 of the 48 articles of the budget. The budget is listed at $46 per barrel. That's set in stone, and they'll go with that. It started out fine. They had a quorum. They got to reading these articles. Apparently, they got to Article 13, I would assume, and then they had somewhat of a walkout. Disrupted the quorum. They had to call it a day. All this still boils down to the Kurdistan issue, whether it's the allocations to Kurdistan or the allocations of the salaries of the Peshmerga and the staff. There seems to be a little bit of debate on where these allocations are going to go. Are they going to go to the provinces, or are they going to go to the KRG themselves, the regional government, and then they distribute to the provinces? I think that seems to be a sticking point with the body. We still don't know of the 12.6, the 14, or the 17% allotted to Kurdistan. I guess the bottom line is they started the process. What was supposed to happen today was that there was supposed to be a meeting of the three presidencies. Okay. Originally, it was scheduled for the evening, but then they bumped it up to 10 a.m. Baghdad time. And then they were going to meet, and they're a representative of the respective Sunni, Shia, Kurd alliances, kind of a thing. Anyway, they didn't meet. Now they pushed the meeting back to 5 p.m. Baghdad time today. So Parliament went through with their thing. I think the big thing was that they did get the ball rolling on the budget. When it got to the sticking point, maybe tonight with this meeting of the presidencies, we'll see if they can work that out a little bit further, and we'll come back Saturday and just see what they could do. They did do something. It's not to say that they didn't do anything, but obviously our big thing was the budget. They did vote on a resolution calling on the GOI to set a date for the departure of the foreign troops. All this has to go through Parliament, whether it's the Status of Forces Agreement or these, any troops remaining there. We can talk about the UN Charter and everything like that. Iraq is a sovereign country, and they will call the shots on this. Anyway, what they did was they left it up to the GOI to determine how much time is needed. A suggestion was 1 to 2 years of the remaining of these forces, within Iraq, which is a good thing. I mean, it speaks to the assistance and the stability factor. So anyway, that's pretty much all I had on the budget. We can go back and forth on who said this, who said that, what might they do or whatever. But until they do it, we just don't know. The only thing we do know is they voted on 12 of the 48 articles within the budget. Pat?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to speculate is a waste of time because, we've seen them declare things and we've seen things accomplished after declaration, but more often than not, it winds up being a little later than presumed. But this budget is important, like other budgets have been. Although they are all important. This one here is important because of what it means to obligations and arrangements made with World Bank and IMF. So, on the one hand, they need a budget just because, but on the other hand, they need it because of what it says to not have one in the face of obligations that they have signed on to with World Bank, IMF. Okay, yeah. And Bobby, go ahead.
Well, you can't discount the fact that, just like what you said, this was driven before the conference, during the conference, and after the conference of having this budget. I think Kaylee brought it up earlier. It also speaks to the stability of the political aspect of Iraq. There's tons of money waiting to be released to the provinces. The provinces are hurting for money. Mm-hmm. So, this budget, we've had people ask, well, what does this mean as far as a change in value? Will this release the change in value? No, one, they're not going to vote on the budget and then all of a sudden say, okay, now we can change the value of our currency. We're still back to support and sustain. But what this will do is get the economy going big time.
Right.
Not just the central economy, but the economy of all the provinces and everything like that. People need this money to go forth with either the reform process, the economic reforms, social reforms, political reforms. Everything takes money. Everybody says money can't buy you happiness, right, but it sure could get you to that point to where you're at least smiling.
Right. Well, it's the catalyst for all these reforms. It's
no doubt.
It's what got things held up in all kinds of directions. I mean, just look at an angle, and it's not good to not have a budget. So and so that's, I guess, best we can say there. In other words, that's not all we can say about the budget. It's still a wait and see, and that's where we leave it for now.
Yep, you got it.
All righty. What did you have up next? You.
Well, I think now we're getting into the nuts and bolts of what happens after the donor conference. We talked about it a lot before, and that they need to set this up almost perfectly in order for it to work. Everybody, within these donor countries, these businesses and everything like that, they're all waiting to see what Iraq does internally. We saw a little bit of it prior to the conference as far as the guarantees and all the National Investment Commission documents that were produced and everything like that. Now we're waiting to see what they do. So everything we see in the news today, we can tie it to the setup of this donor conference money, this $30 billion. I mean, they're waiting. It hasn't been released yet, and it's not going to be released until Iraq does some things. One of the important things we saw was a sovereign development fund. In my opinion, this is a huge deal, and it's being set up by the World Bank, the IMF, and Iraq themselves. Iraq's never had a sovereign development fund. The closest they've come to it was the DFI fund, the Development Fund for Iraq. Okay, and that was all handled by other entities, kind of a thing. But anyway, we saw on Wednesday that they added $240 million to this fund. Now, I could talk an hour about this fund, but it's basically used as a vehicle to unlock capital in capital-starved industries. Okay. Now the key to all this is the setup and how it's set up and how it's driven, how this vehicle is driven. The World Bank and the IMF are pretty much sponsoring this thing, and they will drive this vehicle to unlock all this capital in these industries we've been talking about. Again, support and sustain. Whether that support and sustain your economy, which will lead to a support and sustain the IQD outside the borders of Iraq. I thought that was a big deal. And I'm just going to cover a couple, Pat, and then by all means, you add what you want. Another big one was that the U.S. implemented the program to control public spending. This is that Takamul thing, Pat, that we talked about, which means integration. They're putting this out. We saw an article today that this is going to start place in 6 provinces, which kickstarts the decentralization of the central government into the provinces. The provinces will be given more power to attract investment that take care of the people within that province and not rely solely on Baghdad and the budget for their money. They will start earning their money and have the right to do with what they want with their money as far as attracting investment, making their cities more livable, more attractive, and stuff like that. Capitalism at its best. And this also covers, we've talked in the past about the public financial management law, and this will go a long way towards that, and that the partnership in all of this is the World Bank and the private sector. Okay, when you have all this money, just like the PMF says, it's a public financial management. You have these funds, and that's what this Takamul. I may be saying that wrong, but anyway.
Well, I was going to reference it real quick for people who to look up this to find out what Bobby's talking about. You spell it Takamul, and look that up on Google, and you'll see exactly what he's talking about right now. Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, well, just real quick, what's the gist of that? If you've got that pulled up.
Bear with me because I don't have it open at the moment. But what it is, it's a company whose job it is to integrate. Follow along or let me know if I'm right here because I'm trying to pull it up right now. I had just turned it. I had just closed that window out, so bear with me a second. It'll only take a second, and I'll give you the full definition. Okay, so that's Kamul. Okay, bear with me, folks. God, yeah. Okay, yeah. Tagamo is a specialization technology consultant and services company. And what they do, bear with me, so I'm opening it up further so I can give a better read of what they do. But it's also innovative, so it's new to Iraq. And actually, this is the company's website I've opened up, and I'm just looking for the explanation. Yeah, it's a consultancy that helps the business achieve their goals by framing efficient strategies for implementing our offered technology solutions. So it's a technology solution for business. And so I'm reading further down here. We offer most feasible solutions by interacting with our clients. So they work hand in hand, with the client to understand and analyze their specific requirements and set up a class solution that acutely addresses the needs and meets their budget. That's what that.
Yeah, and see that's what this whole project is about. It's about giving powers to others besides the central government. Okay, decentralization. When we look at it. Yeah, and this is all part of the reform file.
Right.
There's one article that stated that this will be in cooperation with the World Bank, and the private sector will be a partner in the monitoring and implementation of this project. This is all sponsored by USAID, and this came out from the American ambassador over there, and everything you said supports the reform efforts of the government, and it's all to improve the ability to provide services by these provinces to its citizens and stuff like that. There's a lot of money out there for Iraq. Now comes the time to make sure that these funds aren't pilfered like they have been from 2003 to today's date, really. That's
right.
why they're putting in all these programs, and a lot of them are electronic-based data systems. So
just like
this,
they offered.
And this was the concern of the donor countries and the investors coming into Iraq. You can tell me about all your guarantees and everything like that, we're a friendly environment and we need you, blah, blah, blah. But until you make the effort to prove to them that, hey, you know what, this is what we've implemented and this is what's in place now. Those are the protections that countries want and the investors want.
Right.
So,
show your.
Yeah, I just thought that was a fascinating statement by them. Now, another thing that sprung off the donor conference was this. If we recall, Rex Tillerson talked about a $3 billion investment, and this will be governed by the Exim Import-Export Bank or something like Exim.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so now, we heard about that during the donor conference. Okay, now we see in Basra that this $3 billion was going to be released there to support U.S. businesses that want to invest in Iraq. So it will all generate out of Basra. And Basra is going to be or has been termed the financial capital of Iraq, or the economic capital of Iraq. Iraq's going to have economic cities, which they designated already. I think Baghdad was one of the first ones, and that happened 2 days ago. Okay, now you're going to have these economic capitals, these financial capitals. Okay, so now just in a week's worth of news, now we know what this $3 billion is going to be used for. It's going to support the U.S. businesses that want to go into Iraq, mostly Basra, I would think, and invest. So this is the springboard for them. Yes, sir.
Is this the same $3 billion that is under the MOU with Bank of America?
Yeah, I think this. I don't know if Bank of America is involved. I've heard of EXIM.
I saw two of them. The EXIM came after the one with Bank of America, where they signed for investment. Well, what it is loans for infrastructure and that kind of thing, with a $3 billion cap to it. So it sounded familiar, $3 billion, and I was trying to relate whether this was all in the same grouping of $3 billion capped thing, or is this two entities with $3 billion apiece capped for purposes of reconstruction, which would put the total at $6 billion. You understand why I'm telling you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, there's so much money being thrown at Iraq. Actually, I shouldn't say being thrown, but being
dangled. Dangled, because they
yeah.
got to do some stuff. It's a stick and a carrot.
Yeah, and that's why, when I mentioned on the last call, that I have expectations of Iraq, and I'm not talking about a raid or anything, but show me something during the month of March that's going to keep me involved in this investment, okay?
Keep the momentum going. They've got some great momentum since the Kuwait conference, I think. Just my own view is there's a lot of great momentum going, and if that continues to be a trend, then I don't see why we're not, at the edge of this.
Oh yeah, exactly, and that's when we talked about the guarantees, yada yada yada. Now we talk about what Iraq is doing internally to strengthen those guarantees. I mean, this is a thing of beauty, and boy, you bet they're keeping me interested. They're keeping me interested big time. So anyway, that's all the money that's being, like Pat said, dangled to Iraq, but it's not free money anymore. It's not, we trust you to do the right thing. Oh hell no. No,
that also points out, Bobby. You bring up a good point, because they're talking about the budget, and see, they can't even accept these loans until the budget is accomplished, and they can't accept loans beyond what the budget will work with. In other words, if they were offered $100 billion, that's great, but they can only accept so much based on their budget and ability to pay back.
Well, and that I was talking with a group of friends last night, and we were discussing these loans, and is this a part of the holdup on the budget? Because this budget is being driven by the IMF. I mean, we've seen that for months. The IMF has a huge hand in this. And you know what? The IMF is not going to release the third review of the standby arrangement.
There you go. It's also holding up that standby.
Yeah. Okay. So when you go to that, so let's separate the loans, and we talked about this the last call, and that's where you have to understand the separation of these loans, grants, donations, whatever they're deemed as, is that we saw that Iraq took the lead on this, Iraq with the help of the donor countries, and they separated into sovereign, which was 15-point-something billion, which is a responsibility of the government. So the government has to account for that $15 billion. Okay. And then on the other hand, you've got the non-sovereign loans. Okay, those are specifically, and I think that was at like 11 to 15 billion, somewhere around that area. Okay, so now those monies are driven towards the private sector, enhancement of the private sector, to promote the private sector. Now those are monies that Iraq is not obligated to. Okay, that will come off the generation of the kickstart of the private sector, and that's a money-generating aspect of it. So that's where those loans are going to go. So we'll see when the budget comes out, and the further we get along into March, of what they can handle. We still haven't had that meeting of these contracts, these so-called contracts, and how they're going to be handled. There's a lot of people that are hanging their research on that they have to have a rate prior to these contracts. And I'm not going to argue that point. I can't argue that point because everything they're doing is going to the support and sustain of the economy and the monetary policies. Okay? So, I'm not going to argue that point, but it's really cool to see what they're doing to get to that point of support and sustain.
Well, Bobby, if I'm being honest, that falls under one of those categories of unverifiables. Show it to me, and then I'll promote it. But until you can show it to me, I got to put it in the speculation category. And I'm not trying to hurt my feelings.
No doubt.
I've heard they got. The reason I'm saying this is I've heard they got of this and they got of that ever since I got into this. How much of that has panned out? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Oh,
so, yeah. And that's why I say, I'm not tying anything to a rate. What I tie this to is that everything they're doing is going to support and sustain Iraq, whether that be internally or outside of Iraq. Now, along with that, that's why I said, I'm not going to argue the points of they have to. That's not. I mean, that's way above my pay grade. But what I am saying is that what they have said for a long time now about they have to have this, they have to have that. I can see everything taking place outside of that will give credence to some of their sayings in the past about Iraq having to go international with their currency. I think we're getting off on a path here that we could talk about this forever.
You're right, because it's specific. There's specific things that I was, I guess, speaking to, and there is some broad sense things which are logical math movements that but those things that don't that we can't verify. It's just hard to push out.
Well,
as fact.
And Pat, know what? I'll go back to one thing that you and I have always talked about for I've known you for 2 years now, close to, is that we've always talked about the support and sustain. Okay, and that goes with the economy, which will generate a support and sustain of the currency if they decide to take that currency outside of Iraq. Okay, we've always talked about the cool thing that we've been discussing today is that this is everything that we had hoped to see. Okay, and it's at a crucial time for Iraq, and Iraq is doing amazing things internally, with the help of other agencies, no doubt about that. But it is being done internally to solidify that the prospect of Iraq taking their currency international, because it all falls under the support and sustain thing. There was one thing we talked about the empowering of the Iraqi citizen. We talked about the sovereign development fund. We talk about the poverty strategies that they've taken. Okay, so now let's go back about a year when the World Bank said, there have to be reforms that empower the Iraqi citizen. Okay, so one thing that came out that was in the budget was this $200 million. Okay, and that's USD, so that's what, 200 billion IQD. When they talked about that, they said that this will be directed towards the youth, and it's an income or it will sponsor income generating projects. Okay, now this is the start of the empowering of the Iraqi citizen. A lot of stuff is being youth driven. Okay,
and we've seen that for a while. And a lot of projects coming up that were youth oriented, and I wanted to say experiments, but what do you call it? Trials of certain programs that were youth-oriented, having to do with the higher education of youth and getting
that higher educated youth to now be the mover and shaker, as it were, of a new Iraq. And, I hope I'm saying that correctly. In other words, these are going to be the people who have the innovative new ideas for the future.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost been forgotten generations in Iraq just because of the wars, and the sectarian violence and everything that's going on. So, when we talk about the poverty level in Iraq, we've always said that the only way you get people out of the poverty level is, one, you make your economy strong, and you integrate your economy into the private sector, which generates jobs. We've talked about that forever. So, see, this is where this is going. It all hinges on the private sector and a market-type economy to drive the sovereign development funds, to drive these anti-poverty measures they've taken, and everything like that. I thought it was cool to see that $200 million within the budget. We'll see more when it comes out there. There's a site that published the budget, but it's all in Arabic. And to be honest with you, I really don't care what is said line by line in the budget. I do not care. I want to see what the budget does when it's released to the provinces, along with all these other programs that are going on. That's why I say March is going to be a critical month for Iraq and me personally. They have to show me some stuff that keeps me
and you've got the attitude that these new investors have. But if they didn't plan on going forward, Body should have never said we were open for business, because like my speculation has been that has helped to generate a more discerning investor who knows how to invest, I guess is where I'm going with this, and knows that he wants certain rights. This is how everybody else does it. Everybody else hedges their bets. Why is Iraq different? We want the same thing here. And until we get that, you're going to always kind of be at arm's length. And that's just the reality.
Well, and Pat, we can't. When we talk about all this stuff going on, I kind of wanted to throw this reconstruction and investment policy they came up with. And, it was issued in February of 2018. They never gave a date on it or anything. But it talks about 5 pillars, okay?
Are you there, Bobby?
Pat, you still there?
Yeah, we lost you just for a second.
Yeah, my Bluetooth went crazy. But anyway, when we talked about all these protections and everything, Iraq came out with this document, the Reconstruction and Investment thing. I'm just going to touch on it real quick, because I try and read this thing as much as I can. It's just a fascinating document. We've talked about it. But, here's the 5 pillars, and this all ties into what the investors are looking for. It talks about governance. Okay, that's pillar number 1. It talks about good governance at both the local and national level. It's critical to strengthen trust and legitimacy of the government. Okay, I could read on and on about this, but pillar number 2, the reconstruction and peace building. Okay, this talks about pretty much the reconciliation document, okay, and that all the civil societies have to come together and work as one, as a local community. Now this is stuff written by Iraq, okay, from the outside. Okay, so that's one. Social and human development, taking care of the training of health workers, medical supplies, education as far as schooling. There's a lot of people that have been hurt by this ISIS war that went on. It's just amazing of the psychological rehabilitation just for women alone, and girls, little girls and boys that were recruited as soldiers. Okay, so that's another thing they're working on. Okay, pillar number 4 is the infrastructure. That's bringing the infrastructure up to promote local construction business, local investments, everything, any energy generation, distribution assets, housing and accommodation. We see that on a daily basis of what they're doing there. Okay, now for the big one. The big one is the economic development, okay? And this talks about sustaining investments over a period of time. Whether, it's the 2018 to 2022 vision or planning or anything like that. It goes into tourism, the private sector, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's just, I could read this for days just on the economic development. But basically what it's saying, it's talking about, we have to do this stuff in order to attract investment. And when they came out with this document, it lays it on the line. So then we go back to all this implementation that they're doing as of late. It supports this document. Everything has to be verified, oversaw, or there has to be oversight and everything into how this stuff is done. Iraq has had a reconstruction or a donor conference before. They've had a reconstruction effort before. And they've screwed it up. I mean, it allowed, it allowed for a little bit of progress, but not like what they needed.
They had no handle on corruption as like they do now, and it's still not a pretty picture. But we see, like you said, daily. We watch this daily, and you can watch these corruption, these instances of corruption and repatriation of money, and that's where Interpol has come in a big way handy, is for those monies having been expatriated from Iraq, the people involved with its expatriation and the return of both. Interpol right now, and it's great, we've seen some more Interpol stuff, they as far as I know right now, Parliament doesn't have an arrangement, and I'm using the quote things, with Interpol, so that Interpol, as it were, has a free hand within Iraq proper, but they are working in close hand-in-hand coordination outside the borders of Iraq. And I just wanted to lay that out because some people might be confused about Interpol's kind of relationship with what's going on. And so they tend to be the agency that are handling international to Iraq. And so Iraq is trying to handle itself internally. Does that make sense? Am I making sense, Bobby?
Yeah, and that all boils down to those are the axes that we have to look at. What we just talked about as far as these pillars and everything else, and the oversight and everything like that. This is where they have to start acting on the corrupt. All the mechanisms we've talked about, the electronic platforms and everything else, that prevents any further corruption from taking place, okay? Will that be enough to attract the investments to the level that they desire? That has yet to be seen. That's what we're waiting to see. I think, Shannon Kennedy brought in that article on Interpol about the arrest warrants against the 37 personalities. This has never happened before in Iraq, and I was looking for there it is right there. He explained that the arrival of Interpol to Iraq to receive arrest warrants, that's the key thing, not just to talk about what's going on. They received the arrest warrants as a precedent that did not happen previously, and usually go to the governments to hand over the memos, referring to the seriousness of those moves to arrest the corrupt. Right. So, we've talked about this for a couple of years now. How can a body handle this and still stay politically clean? Well, they just did it right there.
There you go. You got international help, and that's why on one thread I was commenting that it's going to take more than local boys. Like as far as Maliki goes, that big M word. As far as getting him a coffin fit for the purpose, that's going to be have to be a change of venue. It's going to be hard to get a square hearing. Full.
Well, see, that's what's going to be interesting on can they go with the change of venue, because Interpol can arrest, detain, or whatever on behalf of the government. Right. Then it becomes incumbent upon the sovereignty of Iraq to prosecute this.
Right. Well,
know,
that file is being held up in the military system right now, so it's out of Iraq judicial hands and into military hands, and so they're still investigating to determine whether it warrants a tribunal.
Yeah, well, and this all, all this talk, which we just talked about, Interpol, they have the 37 arrest warrants, blah blah blah. We still have to see some action taken on it. I like seeing this talk and everything like that, but until you start making it public of so and so has been arrested for this, so and so has been arrested for that. Throw me some arrest figures and show me some names. Show me some names, and if they're high up political, so be it.
Well, I've seen names, but the names haven't rung any bells with me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they're not the names.
Yeah. There's a lot of this, these arrests that are taking place, and I've seen some of them that have to deal with the financing of ISIS and stuff like that. That is an international crime right there.
There you go.
It's a crime within Iraq, but it's also a crime that the international authorities can act on without any approval of the Iraqi government. It's just like if you want to bring Maliki into the picture, if you want to go after him internationally, you're going to have to prove genocide and or a war crime.
Right, and that's why it's in the hands of the war. I mean, not the war, the army, the military right now.
Yeah.
In other words, it's out of civilian investigators' hands now into the military investigators' hands.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Well, anyway, we're getting into time here, Pat. What's driving you on this thing?
Well, I'm watching the momentum in a lot of places. I don't see it as one linear action going on. So it's the multiplicity and the preponderance of the evidence. And like you say, I keep saying they need to show their work. You can't just talk a good talk. You got to show me something. Show, because talk. That's why these new investors they're rattling the edges of the cage, going, hey, we're interested, man, but we know certain things aren't square here yet, and without pointing out the obvious, we need some of that stuff to be taken care of, and then you've got our full attention. Right now, you've got us interested, but you'll have our full attention if you show your work.
Yeah. Good point. And that's a cool part about it now. Like I said, we could have a 2-hour news time to discuss all these projects that are taking place now. Just like when we talked about that, the U.S. to implement the program to control public spending, that took place. Okay, that has been confirmed that it has kicked off. It's being implemented as we speak. Okay,
right.
So that's a good point. I'm watching all this help that they're getting in implementing these programs. Here we are, March 1st, and I've always said March is going to be a very interesting month. With all these programs, that's laying the foundation for this big kickoff into the reconstruction and investment aspect of Iraq. And I couldn't be more happier than the way the news is going towards this private sector or this public-private sector partnership or, getting this economy going. When we talk about the poverty levels, we talk about the Sovereign Development Fund and the pillars of governance and societal type actions. You need money to do this. And Iraq's just now realizing that, we cannot rely on oil alone. There's other aspects that will drive our economy and make oil the creme de la creme of our wealth.
let's use oil as an internal refurbishment fund, infrastructure. That, because I had heard that being bantered around that's what they want to do is use oil wealth just to fix up the inside of the country, and you get business started and rolling, and that we've seen can build on itself, or we know that it builds on itself, but you got to get it started. You get that ball rolling, and it's still not going to be a 2-3 day thing, and then all of a sudden, wham, the lights are on. You've got to build up some speed too. We're talking inertia, momentum, all those things. I know I'm using these analogies, but I mean it's the same thing. They have to keep up the speed at which that they're making these reforms. In other words, we're still seeing some things be stymied in Parliament. And Parliament is the biggest millstone around the neck. So when a body did what he did to come up with the special commissions and everything to sort of get some of this investment guarantees up and moving, that was great. And although he can't play dictator and sidestep Parliament altogether for all matters, when he's able to, it sure has helped the process. And I was going to tell you, my excitement, we use that 1 to 10 scale, and I was always at an 8.25 or an 8.3 or whatever. I'm at a 9 now, So, and it's just a few things I think that still need to happen. Some small things in the scheme of things. If you're talking about the bulk of things accomplished and things still to accomplish, and that's getting that private sector up and running.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'd most probably be remiss if we didn't talk about our concerns. About all this. If we there's still a concern about Iranian influence. You cannot turn a blind eye to that. You cannot.
But it is being minimized. It's being minimized to a degree because of Iraq's full-in cooperation with Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia has said, hey, we want to minimize some of the Iranian influence. So, yeah, in other words, I don't want what you said, Bobby, to scare people because, I don't know how many times I've heard, how much Iran, is it going to stop this and all that kind of stuff. Well, they would like to be, the biggest pariah in the neighborhood if they could, but right now it's a matter of checks and balances, and I don't think they're big enough to bully their way in and push the world out. Do you see what I'm saying? So in other words,
I think it's just something I keep an eye on. We've always heard a body talk about, if you're not part of the Iraqi security forces, you're an enemy of the state if you carry weapons.
Right.
We saw a lot of that take place in Basra over the last couple of weeks, where they've had issues. Now we're starting to see a little flare up. Some are tying it to the militias, some are tying it to ISIS sleeper cells. I still have a concern about the stability of the Iraqi security forces able to handle these sleeper cells and or these militias. I mean, it's not a major concern, because everything else, like Pat said, is moving forward to strengthen the internal workings of Iraq. I think once the Iraqi people see this stuff start being implemented, activated, and show some results, I personally think that Iranian influence will dwindle, because they're basically going to be left behind, and the Iraqi people will make it known during the elections of what's acceptable and what's not. Getting to the elections, I still think a body has to show something prior to the May 12th elections that shows, he's on the right track. You can't go into the May elections and say, yes, any day now we're going to start the reconstruction and poverty level. Your hopes and dreams are still there, and I'm working on it. But I need 4 more years. It's not going to work anymore. There's way too much going on right now. I think that we won't see a lot of progress prior to May 12th. He has to show it. But anyway, like I said, my only concern is, show me some results. You're starting to do that now. Now I'm waiting to see what these contracts are going to entail off of this donor conference. How is this $30 billion going to be disseminated, and how will the investors react to it? Because, like I said, a lot of this stuff is just talk now. We won't know until we see some actionable results on investments.
Well, you reflected the concerns of the investors who are now standing at the gates. The thing I'm seeing, the biggest holdup to investment right now is just the physical security, making sure that if you send a cadre of people to a country to help, initiate a startup business, that they don't get whacked coming off the bus, from the airport. Wow. And I'm just putting it out there in as plain as brass tacks as I can put it. And so that's what. Go ahead.
And you can't have a province wanting all this investment. It's not just Baghdad needing this. You can't have all the provinces want all these investors come in and say, we get a couple bombings a day or, 1 a week or whatever, but we're cool. An investor's going to go, what?
No. It's only one bombing a week. One bombing, what?
No. You need to show me some sense of, I don't want the military coming in here when you say, hey, we got a problem. Send the rapid response team, which they have done. Heck, they even did it in Basra 3 weeks ago.
And those guys are the bomb, ain't they? From what what we've seen. I mean, they're U.S. trained, so that.
Well, and that's where this budget comes across, is that it has to promote these reforms within the provinces, just on a scale of having the local law enforcement make sure that it's a secure environment. You can't have the military react to something. You have to be proactive.
Yeah, proactive. And there you go.
And securing everything. One real quick thing before we go is that. I've been speaking about, we've been speaking about Basra a lot, this $3 billion yada. They did have a soccer game there. I know everybody's laughing at me over this soccer stuff, but this soccer thing was a big deal to Iraq. It was in their new stadium down there, an amazing stadium. It attracted 65,000 people. There were more than 65,000 people outside the stadium trying to get in or just hear it.
You're talking about the new stadium? The new stadium? And that thing is grand looking, isn't it?
Oh, it's huge, and I've seen pictures of the game last night. But anyway, what this, this was the first time Saudi Arabia has come to play in Iraq in like 40 years. It was the first time since the Saddam era that they actually even had a game like this. FIFA has just now come out and said that they will release the ban on that. This is huge towards tourism and national pride. And plus they beat Saudi Arabia 4-1. I thought
there
that was cool. So there's all kinds of stuff going on. But Basra is even getting a Starbucks and a Hardee's. I mean, figure that out. So anyway, like I said, if you get Pat and I enough time, we'll talk about this for hours. I would like to say that if it wasn't for Kaylee Walls, that we would not have this forum. I appreciate everything she's done. Her family is dealing with cold and flu issues.
Yes. Thank you, Kaylee.
Yeah, anybody who's been a mother out there, how us men are when we get sick. You have to take care of it. I mean, we're just the biggest babies around. But let's all wish for a speedy recovery. Skeeter's dealing with health issues, not anything major or anything, but we all wish them well. And again, thank you to all the members who are part of our group. I know there are some concerns about, I'm getting deleted from this other group because I'm coming to your guy. I can't control that. This is not high school. This is not junior high. This is an investment, and you should be allowed to go wherever you want to seek your information on this investment. If people are locking you out of their forum just because you're a part of another group, well, that's just sad. It's childish, it's stupid, and it's ego-driven people who get butthurt over something. And like I said, we have no control over that. We apologize. Well, no, I'm not going to apologize for it because it's not my action. But we value and we appreciate every member. We're not trying to be the biggest group out there. We're just trying to be a group that is following this investment and sticking with the facts. I'm not going to tell you anything that we haven't researched and studied. I can take an article and I can take a tidbit out of that article and do some more research on it and tie it into a couple of other things, and that's what we do. Yeah, we're not very fancy. We don't we don't say stuff that we don't believe in. Sound good?
Exactly. We hope it's not a bunch of unassociated tidbits strung together, but that it's a real narrative that kind of lays out where we are and the things that we should honestly be looking for compared to what we were told to be looking for, and that sort of thing. And if we appear boring, it's because we don't get into all the frou-frou stuff. But Bobby, it's been a great call. I've appreciated a bunch being here, and for our members who weren't able to make it today, Skeeter and Kaylee, although Kaylee's working in the backgrounds for us, she was not able to be on the call. We appreciate y'all and hope you can make it with us on the next one. Bobby and myself are out of here. Everybody have a good day, and we hope to do this again soon.
Thank you.